Hi, everybody. I think we're just going to get started, and then we can have people join in late. I should probably do my. I'll do my video here. Let me start again. Hi. My name is Amanda Ersch. I'm the president of the WCPA. I think we're going to get started, and we can have people join in late. We are also recording this, so if anyone misses anything, we'll be able to share this or the presentation as well. We are joined tonight with Renee Bolivar from Gardens by Renee. And she connects people to their food, nature, and one another through the design, build, and maintenance of sustainable landscape, organic kitchen gardens, and pollinator habitats. She is a lovely person, and I'm excited to have her. What we're going to do is have her go through a presentation that she's prepared. We did have some questions that were submitted in advance, so I think she probably will tackle some of those during the presentation, and then we'll make sure to get to all your questions afterwards. So welcome, Renee.
Hey, thanks you guys. This is fun, mixing it up a little bit here during COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, my favorite part of growing is using the raised garden beds, which I call growing boxes. Raised garden is kind of old school. I love using the growing boxes. They make life so much easier in the garden. So I guess I'll just go ahead and start the presentation. There's not a lot of people on here right now. So if you guys have questions, like just say, hey, and it's fine. Like we can kind of go and wing it. We can do it as we go. So anyway, as you can see this presentation, those are 2 growing boxes that I put in here in Wayland a couple years ago for a friend who had no growing experience whatsoever. Her husband actually bought it for her, and that's her first year growing. So she had tons and tons of lettuce in the spring and snap peas. That's your early spring planting right there. And those gardens are ripping this year again too, and she's loving every minute of it. So let's go see if this works. I don't know if you want me to read this, but if maybe not. If is 2020 the year that you want to learn how to grow your own food, or you want to have biodiversity, you want to create a healthy lifestyle, are you ready to learn more? Are you guys here because you're doing this already, or you want to learn? What do you got going on? Michael? No? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to learn. This is Jacqueline.
Oh, so you're not currently growing?
Not currently at all, but thinking about it.
So awesome. So you fit into this category of this is the year that you're like, let's do it. It's not too late. A lot of people get nervous that because it's after Memorial Day, like you can start a garden in the fall and still be okay.
Oh, that's good.
So just start small and steady, and I'm always here. I'm all over social media. You can always ask questions on social media, and then it's kind of free. Obviously, I'm for hire for consultation too, but like you can definitely follow me on Instagram or Facebook, and you can get a lot of information for free. So I think that that's important, and I'm here for you. These are some gardens that I take care of up in New Hampshire, Hampton Beach. Huge garden, 5 boxes. For those of you starting out, I recommend start small, start slow. Like you really don't want to kill yourself, and you don't want to fail. You want to be set up for success, not failure.
I'm sorry? What would you consider small? Like one or
two growing boxes. 1 or 2 growing boxes is 2 is great because you actually get some food. 1 box isn't going to get you a whole lot, but 2 boxes is probably really good. So why raised garden beds? I think that
before you continue, what is the size of the boxes that are in the photos there?
Was the photo of New Hampshire here?
Yeah, what size are those boxes?
I didn't build those. Those are 4x8s or 4x10s. And to be completely honest, I don't like 4 foot wide. It's awkward. You can't reach the middle, and I'm tall. I have good length, but getting to the middle is hard. And a lot of the times when you use a 4 foot wide box, or if it's in the ground and it's lower, people tend to step in it because they can't really access the middle. I think a 3 foot wide by 12 or 10 is perfect. so that you can access everything easier. The 4-foot is just tough, and I always feel like this middle space that's missing, that it's just not easy to grow in.
Okay, that's good to know because my intention is actually to have an elevated box,
Yep.
hopefully by the end of the year. So it won't be on the ground, but elevated.
Yeah, and I love the elevated because I'm, getting older and it's hard to bend down. And so for me, if I can get the boxes 22 inches tall, 29 inches, it's awesome. Like if I don't have to get down on my hands and knees and crawl around, it's just a lot easier at this point in my life. So I like the elevated. I also think they help with critters and animals, and I think they look great. It's more of like a piece of furniture than it is just a box on the ground. And I am vain like that. I always tell people my gardens need to look just as good as they are productive. I want them magazine worthy every time. If I go and I install a new garden, it's got to be pimped out and it's got to be gorgeous. So it's you want it to be a part of your focal point in your backyard. You don't want it to be just something you throw in the back and you're embarrassed of it. You want to be proud of it. So as far as why using raised, and it's all a rage right now. It's everywhere you go. Everyone's talking about it. Gardens by Renee, I started 10 years ago. And when I started Gardens by Renee, I had a launch party. I'm here in Wayland. And I swear to God, people were like, what is she talking about? What is she going to do? Is she crazy? Like what? And now it's everywhere. Hollywood, celebrities, everyone's doing it. And people are really coming back to the whole victory garden, especially now during COVID, like food security, not leaving your house. Like it's really nice to be able to walk outside and be able to get fresh herbs. Even if you just start with herbs, it's great. Instead of having to run to the store for some cilantro or run to the store for some basil. So I think that right now you're going to see a huge, huge uptake on the garden beds and hopefully, and organic gardening in the backyard. Hopefully it'll continue because we should be doing it. It's innate and everyone knows how to do it. You just have to get back to your roots and realize that like we do know how to provide for ourselves and we do know how to grow our own food. We just kind of got separated from our food along the way. So anyway, raised bed gardens, they make gardening easier for planting, weed control, and harvesting for obvious reasons, right? You're not on the ground. I do have 2 or 3 clients that we have an in-ground, we have plots, and it's exhausting. It's so much time consumption on weeding because everything gets in there. With the raised garden beds, the other reason why I love them so much is because you put them anywhere. So for example, this week I have 2 clients that have decks and they have 2 foot wide and they range between 4 feet, 6 feet and 10 feet long boxes. The 2 foot wide sits right up against the deck. It's gorgeous. So I like raised beds because I can customize them and put them anywhere. No tilling. There's no compaction. Again, when you walk on the soil, when you have people, kids, dogs, if you have to walk through it, it's really bad for the soil structure. And then it's bad for the plants as well. Like you're not going to get carrot seeds and basil seeds and things like that to germinate in compacted soil. So, you don't want to be stepping on where you're gardening. There's better drainage with them. They extend the growing season here in New England on both sides of it. So spring and fall. So they warm up quicker and then you can keep them warmer. So I love that aspect of it. Like my mom always is surprised. She's an organic garden. She's been gardening long before organic was even a trendy thing to do. And she's always surprised at how I'm earlier. Like right now I'm already harvesting lettuce, tons of lettuce. My clients have massive amounts of lettuce right now. And she's like, my lettuce is only like 3 inches long. And it's like, that's because I'm growing in raised garden beds that are warmer. And then growing boxes are easier on the back, like I talked about earlier. It's a lot easier to bend down at 22 inches, 16 inches than it is to get down on the ground. And for me, the biggest benefit is the soil quality. You're bringing in your soil, you're importing your soil, and that's huge. Like you can't chintz out or cheap out on your soil. You can't do it. Soil is the most important, critical part, besides for sunlight, for your growing your vegetables. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to the next one?
Where do you get your soil, or where would you recommend like the average person get their soil?
I would recommend that you get that through me. So I have a special blend, and it's a secret, and I'd have to kill you if I told you. But so I do source my from a local source here in Weston. And you can call and you can ask for a Renee's blend. It's Pure Solution in Weston, and just say, I want Renee's blend. And it is a secret blend. It's basically half compost, half loam. And then I also top my garden beds off with a product called Castine from Coast of Maine. And I like to do that for sowing seeds. It keeps the top really light and fluffy. It's a great question. See, this is why you get these secrets, because you're part of the WCPA and you've got these tickets. Did you have a
for
question,
the
Michael?
Go ahead.
No, I think I lost him.
no, sorry, this is Alex, not Michael.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. You mentioned that you have some clients that have their raised beds on the deck.
Yeah.
How deep of a garden bed would you recommend? Like, how much soil should be there?
I would try to do the 22 inches high.
Okay.
Another thing, I'm glad I'm under an umbrella. And another thing is that with the raised beds on the gardens, on the rooftops or on decks or on balconies, you want to make sure that it has a bottom so that it doesn't leach out all over your deck or balcony. Right. You can do 22 inches, and if you want, you can fill some of the bottom with bottles so you're not filling it all up with soil. But I definitely think that the height is good. You really need at least 16 inches for a depth. And that's one of the questions on here, was about how deep you need for the roots. I think 16 inches, 12 inches is pushing it. I like 16 inches. Tomatoes have a long root. Cucumbers get down in there. Even parsley gets down in there. So 16 inches, if you're doing it on a deck, would be the minimal. But if you can go higher, I'd do the 22.
Great, thank you.
And then also make sure you do a lightweight, almost on your deck. I would go with just the Castine raised bed mix, not do a heavy soil. It's just a completely different animal when you're on rooftops. I do rooftop gardens for the Best Bees Company all across the country. And we do like 11-inch beds, and I find that they just dry out. It's like we're constantly running the irrigation. So I've implemented a new, let's go 16 high, because it's 11 inches is nothing, especially on a rooftop. Like, it's a whole nother micro environment up there. So growing boxes can be built in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and they can be built from various materials: wood, recycled plastic, metal, stone, or even hay bales. So a raised garden bed or growing box really can be built out of anything. I love cedar. It lasts. There's great kits you can get online. You can certainly build your own boxes, no problem. If you can do that, good for you. For me, I love the kits. They're quick and easy. They are more expensive, but they go together really well and they last. So I love that. I also am slightly obsessed, and I haven't had anyone buy any yet, but I love the troughs. They're like feed tanks, or I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, fish stock tanks. They're huge aluminum tubs, and you drill holes in them. And I think that, Alex, if you're looking at a deck, those would look spectacular on a deck. Do you know what I'm talking about? The big galvanized tanks. They're like for horse barns or for fish tanks. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
I'm not familiar with them, but if it's what you have here in the picture, I have seen those through YouTube, actually.
Yeah, this is different.
Those.
The stock tanks, if you just Google fish stock tank or troughs, they're awesome. I'm obsessed. They're galvanized, so they're steel looking, and you poke holes on them, and they're gorgeous.
Renee, this is Jacqueline. Can I ask a question about the wood that you use?
Yeah.
Or the kits come in? Is it like, do you use pressure treated wood or just regular wood? Like, how do you?
The kits are
Is
cedar.
there cedar? Okay.
You can use, gasp. You can use pressure treated. My mom would never in a million, she would slap me. She would say, "What are you saying? You can use pressure treated?" She would not like that at all. But pressure treated wood is no longer treated with arsenic. So in my mind, like, it's not going to leach into your food. Like and what is in there, like, it has to be X amount of heat for X amount of days in order. It's like the turf, and I'm not going to get into that whole debate, but like, there really has to be a set of conditions that cause it to leach. So I just feel like if you're going to go pressure treated, it's never going to die. You're going to have it for 20, 30 years. Even the cedar, you're going to have to replace at some point. Fir, you have to replace it. The boxes that I built in the beginning 10 years ago that I built out of pine, just cheap. I didn't have the money. I was like, I'm just going to wing it. They died in like 3 years, rotted. So you have to go through that whole process again. So invest in a quality wood to begin with.
Thank you.
Yep. Location, location, location. This is also one of those like so important. And this is why it's a good idea to have a consultation with Gardens by Renee before you invest all your money and energy and time and hopes into a garden. Southwest facing, 6 hours at a minimum of sunlight. Don't listen to anyone tell you can grow lettuce. No, you're not growing without 6 hours of sunlight. It's not going to happen. You're going to get mold, mildew. You're going to get, disease. The plants are going to struggle. They're going to be all spindly, reaching for the light. So you need sun. Full sun is great. If you can't get full sun, I like morning sun because I find the plants, wake up cold and damp after the night. So it's nice for them to have that if you're going to have 6 hours. So if you can get it in the morning, that's good too. So southwest is ideal. But then if you can't do that, just don't put your garden box on the north side of the house. And also, Alex, if you're talking about a deck, make sure that you're watching and tracking the sun and making sure that your house isn't shading. We recently did an install and we had to change the location that we originally came up with because once we actually started charting the sun, because I had gone there in like February, we realized that it was one of the boxes was going to get shade for most of the afternoon. So like that didn't work out. So it's all about sun. You want great sun, southwest facing exposure if you can do that. Once you've determined where there's adequate sun, at least 6 hours, you want to grab a shovel, pick, level, and get started. And when we talk about site development, the one thing I want to make sure everyone knows is like it's really important to make sure that your boxes are level. I've had a lot of homeowners do it themselves, which I think is fantastic. I'm a DIY girl myself, obviously. And I love when clients take on, they want me to design it, they want me to source it, but they want to build it. But you got to make it level. And if that means digging out the grass, digging out the dirt, do it. Put a level on it and don't be satisfied until you're plumb. Because what will happen is your seeds will wash, you'll have pooling from the water. So you really, really want to make sure you take the time and make sure it's level. And around here, it's a nightmare because we're in dirt with rocks and it sucks. And it's just the way it is. You're going to dig and you're going to hit rock and that's what it's going to be. So site development. This is my little expert tip. What I like to do is I like to put the box down and then I like to edge out the grass. And then I use a pickaxe and a little trowel and I shovel out and then sit it back in and then it sits perfectly. So when you put it back down, you don't have dirt, you have grass right up to the box. Just makes it really nice and neat.
Hi, it's Emily. What do you do with the grass that you dug in? Or dug
I throw
out?
it in the box.
All right.
I just throw it right back in.
Yep.
It'll all decompose, it'll all break down. And then that's a little less dirt you need too.
Okay.
And that's another thing when you're ordering your soil, you want to make sure that you take into consideration how much site development you need to do. So if your box requires a yard of dirt, but then you got to dig out, or vice versa, if you need to bring in fill. Sometimes if I know I can't dig them out, sometimes we'll bump them up with rocks on the bottom, but then that's going to mean we're going to need more dirt. So just make sure you're checking it out and seeing what your pitch is before you order your soil. And it's always good to order extra soil because you can always use it for your pots. You can plant blueberry bushes, raspberries. You can always add extra stuff later. Soil is key. So we already talked about this a little bit, but I'll go ahead and go over it again. Your growing mix is 50-50 growing mix, half soil, half compost. And then for each yard, I add in a cubic foot of peat moss. But really, I've been using the Coast of Maine Castine blend. I've kind of stopped using the peat moss because the Coast of Maine has worm castings and it has peat, but then it also has some fertilizer in it too. So it's really a nice blend. And you can get that at Pure Solutions in Weston. And you can tell Trevor Renee sent you and ask for Renee's blend. Oh, that book, favorite book ever, Teaming with Microbes by Jeff Lowenfels and Wayne Lewis. If you guys are wanting to nerd out a little bit on it, I love it. It's my favorite. And it talks all about how much life is in your soil. And another benefit to using the raised bed gardens is there's no tilling. I'm a no-till person. Every time you dig it up and till it in, you're breaking up the microbes, you're breaking up the soil web, you're breaking up the whole system. So to me, it's important to leave your soil alone and let it create its healthy living layers. Drip irrigation is my favorite if you can get it. Sometimes with budget, it's not always possible the first year to put in your boxes, get your soil, hire the consultant, do the design, and then do irrigation. But drip irrigation is by far the most efficient and effective way to water. DripWorks is a company that I use online. It's cheap. You can get a kit for $150 and install it yourself. And that spaghetti tube right there, that's the Zarrigation. It's micro irrigation. It's drip tubes. Don't use the big soaker hose, and don't use the big 3/4 to an inch drip hose that you get at Home Depot. You want to get this spaghetti tube. A benefit to using this spaghetti tube is like at the end of the season or during the season when I'm transplanting and when I'm changing from spring to summer or from summer to fall, I can lift that whole tube up. I can bring in more compost, do my planting, and then put the tube back. With the bigger irrigation, you can't do that. So the Zarrigation, the drip line here, spaghetti tubes are the best. And
So
you can get that at Home Depot too, but DripWorks is where I got mine. Yeah.
because I'm a complete beginner with this. So basically you buy this kit and then you just hook up your regular hose to it and then like turn it on. I mean, is it technical? Like there's like a dial or a timer, or is it just like very manual where you turn it on?
Pollen is so bad. It's totally cool and totally easy. If you have a spigot outside, I recommend getting a diverter. So you have two, one for your hose and one for this kit. You plug it in, it has a timer, and then you run it over to your bed. So it plugs right into your spigot. And it's awesome because you can set it for timer. Because like what I tell people is I don't want my clients spending all their time watering. I want them looking for pests, looking for signs of stress, looking for disease, harvesting, planting, kind of spending time enjoying their garden. I don't want them standing there watering. You won't do it. You'll miss a day or two because you're busy, you forgot, and then the next thing you know, your garden's dead. So I really think it's important to invest in that irrigation if you can.
We did have somebody.
We have a,
about-
sorry, I was going to pipe in with that question. How
Good.
much? So we have the probably 3 hoses later, but we finally landed on a hose that has those little beads. And so it does that drip irrigation and it's all snaked through our buds, but we have to set it to a timer. So I guess I was just wondering at what points of time and for how long and how wet should the soil be?
Great question. So, I mean, there's no specific time because time would be dependent upon season. This spring, like cold, wet, kind of didn't have to water a lot. Come summer, when I have cucumbers, tomatoes, zucchini sucking up all that water and it's 80, 90 degrees, I got to water a lot more. So usually I tell people 20 minutes a day, always water in the morning. But truly the only way that you know how much to water for 20 minutes and then go stick your finger in the soil. And when you stick your finger in the soil, you're not looking at the top inch. You want to know that 4 to 5 inches down, the root zone it's called, is moist. If after 20 minutes it's still bone dry or dry, add another 10. So you're going to turn it on, let it run, and then stick your finger in it. And then the next day, go out, stick your finger in it. Is it still moist? If it's still moist, you can skip that day. If it's dry, you got to run it again.
Got it. Okay. So it's not like multiple times, like morning and evening, just to keep a general wet.
No,
I mean, you
and
don't
actually,
overwater it, but
yeah, overwatering is more common than underwatering for most people, including houseplants. Everyone wants to overwater. We're just like that. Excessive anything is not good in the garden. You don't need to over-fertilize. You don't need to overwater. And also, like, it's good to let it dry out a little bit. So, like, you don't want to water 2 times a day unless we have extreme temperatures where the plants and they're really highly producing a lot of fruit. You know what I mean? Like if all of a sudden, like I said, tomatoes, cucumbers, if green beans, if squash, if all that stuff is growing at the same time, it's going to need more water. But then again, it depends on how much rain we get too. So like get a rain gauge. They're cheap. You can get them on Amazon, a couple bucks, $5 or whatever. And I have my clients put them in their garden. And then if you get 1 to 2 inches per week is what we're looking for. So if you get an inch of rain, you're not running your irrigation that day or the next day. So that's what I would say about water. Vertical growing is huge, especially when you're using raised garden beds because of the space, the limited space. So I like to have trellises, poles, obelisks, anything you can do to kind of like take up the space, like my cucumbers on this picture here growing up like that. If that cucumber plant was allowed to just grow wild, free range in the bed, it would take over the whole bed and there'd be no room for anything else. Vertical growing is also great because cucumbers, again, you don't want them on the ground. They tend to get mildew. So you want them to rise up so that they can get good airflow. That drip, that's not me. I didn't do that. So she had her guy put in, and I don't like that. Those lines they're like at least an inch in circumference, maybe 3/4 inch, and they take up a lot of space. If you think about a bed that's only 3 feet wide and you've got 4 lines, Jesus, sorry, freaking pollen's brutal, man. It's killing me. That's a lot of space that those lines are taking up, and they're not flexible. They're not bendable. Like, I have to move around them, and I don't like that. So, but it's a pretty garden, right? Pretty good. Look at that squash. It's a monster. Those are, I think this might be pressure treated that we built, 4x4s made out of timbers. That's the first garden I built for Gardens by Renee in 2010, and it's still going. And I eat out of it, and I'm still here. So the goal of Gardens by Renee is to connect people to their food, nature, and one another. And we do this through design, build, and maintenance of sustainable landscapes, organic kitchen gardens, and pollinator habitats. You can sign up for consultation. You can check me out online. I'm everywhere. My website isn't really current. I just can't keep up. But social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that all stays current. And I throw out a lot. So you can learn a lot just by following me there. And so keep growing, and I'll shut this down. And then please ask me any questions you have.
We
Stop
did
share, right? Yeah.
And we did have one question that was asked was tips on weed and critter prevention. So I understand if it's like a raised bed, like on a deck where it has like a bottom, that helps. But if it's a raised bed without, a bottom, do you have any tips for?
So sometimes what I do is I line the bottom of my beds with a mesh, a wire mesh, a hardware mesh, or chicken wire. That helps with like voles and moles and things like that. When you are using the raised beds, it depends on what you have for wildlife in your yard. It depends on how much time you spend in your yard. Like, I'm outside at 6 a.m. and back out there as often as possible. I have a cat, I have dogs, I have kids. So I own my space. The animals don't mess with me. I don't want them in my yard, and they know it. I'm out there as much as possible. If you're working and you don't have a lot of time and you're only outside 15 minutes a day, you're going to probably need to do a fence. You can do electric fence, you can do chicken wire, deer fencing, you can do rabbit fencing, and there's all kinds of stuff that's available at Home Depot that's not going to break the bank when you do it.
Okay.
And the same with the weeds. Like, the weeds aren't that bad, but you just got to keep up with them. And really, it should only take you like 15 minutes a week if you have a couple of raised beds. I mean, last year I had about 100 beds that I took care of. And so, I mean, it's not that much time.
What kind of fencing would you suggest for to work around deer? Because we definitely have a lot of deer in our yard.
I would get the deer netting. I would, if you can, and this is something I recommend, and it can be a different project for a different time, but because deer carry so many terrible ticks and disease and stuff like that, I like the Pure and Oh Deer. I like the sprays. I think they do work. And also, what I like to do in my yard is I actually wrap the deer netting on the perimeter of the property. You can get deer netting. It's like 8 feet tall, and it's a black meshy fabric, and it's super cheap. It's like $50 or whatever for a huge roll of it, and try to keep them out of your yard. If you have a ginormous yard and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to deer net my whole yard, then you can just do your boxes or your garden area. I just did a yard the other day where I just put in stakes around the outside of the box, and then we just zip tied the deer fencing to that. So,
and how easily can you access the garden though if it's?
What I do is I usually like attach it to the bamboo poles or the stakes, and then make like a door. So like there's 2 poles, and then you lift one out, and then you can pull it out. So yeah, if you have deer, you kind of want to try to. They also don't like some smelly stuff, so you can plant lavender and garlic and different things. Deer come to your by scent. That's how they eat. So if you can get the smelly sprays and the deterrents, and then plant some plants around the outside, maybe some stuff that they don't like, that might help too. And use your space and be out there as much as you possibly can. If you have kids, have them pee outside. Like, I mean, if you're not willing to take a pee outside, then have your kids do it. I don't know. Like, it helps. Like, you can buy urine too if you want. Have a squat. It won't kill you. I promise you.
Thank you.
We had somebody
welcome.
ask a question about what can you grow basically this time of year, like or plant, I guess, end of May, early June.
So right now I'm starting my summer crops. All my spring gardens are ripping. The lettuces and spinach and kale and all that stuff is being harvested right now. But this week, starting yesterday, I just started my summer crops. And summer crops for me include cucumbers, tomatoes, green beans, squash, eggplants, peppers, basil, stuff like that. So that's what you can currently start growing, along with radish, summer turnip. I mean, there's so much you can grow right now, but mostly it's the summer favorites. And then come fall, I'll usually start my fall gardens August. I'll start planting stuff at my house and in my greenhouse to then put out for fall. And fall will be, again, spinaches, lettuces, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, kale, chard, spinach. Did I say spinach? Stuff like that. Your cool season crops. And carrots, beets, all of that can be for fall. And I think fall is a delicious time to plant. Like, it's so awesome to be able to pick something in November. Until that freeze comes. Even carrots, I mean, like, sometimes I'm picking carrots in December.
Well, that was all the questions that we had submitted in advance, and I know that people have been asking kind of along the way, but I do want to open it up if anybody has any additional questions. Now's the time to ask.
Don't be shy.
Hey, I have a quick question about trees. Should I be worried about insects or things falling from the trees on the garden?
What you'd get is caterpillars, and they're a nightmare. I sometimes have Lynch come in and spray my trees for the winter moth because I can't stand when I'm out in the garden and I have to put a hoodie on because it's like they're falling on me. They're gross. I use a spray called Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew, and it works really well for the caterpillars. It's organic and you can eat it. It's not going to kill you. The caterpillars, like, what is it?
Is it the one that comes from some bacteria from some island? Is it the one?
That's Bacillus thuringiensis, BT. You can use BT too. Captain Jack's is the next level up. It's a spinosad. I just go to the next level up because it's easier for me because I'm usually at people's houses only once a week. If you're a home gardener and you're taking care of your own yard, use BT because that's a gentler, more organic method, and it makes the caterpillar can't eat. It screws up their belly. Hand picking is the best organic method ever, but those caterpillars are camouflaged, and you can see on my website and on Facebook and YouTube and all those things. I usually have videos of it. They line up on the rib of the, like, say it's kale. They'll sit on that line and you don't even see them. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, your kale looks like Swiss cheese. So it's all about hand picking, swishing, using soaps. But then BT would be the first line. And then, like I said, the Captain Jack's Dead Brew. The caterpillars are a problem, and they're flying around right now. So when you see the white moth flying around your yard early June, late May, right now they're here, they're laying eggs. So within the next 2 weeks, they're going to start. It's gross. I hate them. It's part of organic gardening though. Like, I'm not going to nuke my food. I'm not growing it in my backyard to eat pesticides. I'd rather have to stomach squishing bugs, which is what I do. Or I pay my kids to do it. When they were little, my boys are too big now. I can't bribe them with 25 cents. But when they were little, I used to make them go get Japanese beetles. And I'd be like, I'll give you a quarter. Go put them in a cup.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming, and you can follow Renee on Instagram and Facebook, and we had also talked about putting a special offer out to WCPA members, so we will be getting that information to you. If you wanted to hire Renee to come out for a consult, it sounds like she'll come out to your yard, and Renee, you can speak to this more. But she has offered to extend a discount to WCPA members. So,
Yep, and during the consultation, I usually walk around the property and just help you create a solid growing plan that fits the, your style, your budget, your family, what you want to do. We kind of set up good expectations so that you're going to succeed and not fail. A lot of times people do start too big, they just go all in, and then it becomes frustrating, and then they quit because it's too much. So I'm there to kind of lead you and make sure that you get yourself set up for success, not failure.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much
Thank you, everybody.
and have a good night.
Yeah, keep growing.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.